Let's have a look at John McDonnell, who writes on flownews24.com.au. Also, we'll be podcasting this article up on our Flow News 24 podcast. You can get that via Spotify or one of your other podcast services and be able to listen to this or be able to share it to other people who may be looking to have a listen to what John has written and what I've read from his article today. Labor has a ready-made economic manifesto if it wants it, writes John. Labor's been floundering around looking for an economic policy narrative since the public rejected its big tax and spend approach at the last election. Professor Ross Garnaut has delivered them a ready-made policy in his new book, Reset, Restoring Australia After the Pandemic Recession, if Anthony Albanese and his senior colleagues are brave enough to grasp it. Professor Garnaut is a long-term advisor to governments. He was Bob Hawke's key economic advisor. Before that, he advised the Papua New Guinea government in the years after independence, and when he left Mr Hawke, he went to China, where he gave evidence to the Chinese government on the opening up of their economy. Professor Garnaut's new book is clearly a book of a Labor true believer. In the early chapters, he points out that Australia should not settle for the pre-COVID normal, but should push for above-average growth and full employment. Professor Garnaut says that in the last 30 years, the Australian economy has had three distinct periods. Two periods of boom and one which Professor Garnaut calls the dog days. Coincidentally, the two boom periods he attributes to Labor government's economic management. It's, of course, under Hawke Keating and under Rudd Gillard. He does acknowledge that John Howard was responsible for some economic reform. The dog days are the period of the Abbott, Turnbull and Morrison governments, coincidentally. He argues that what is required for economic recovery from the current recession is a bold plan for reflation. That the truth is we won't know what Australia is capable of until we run the economy strongly enough for long enough to see the emergence of market pressure for sustainable wage increases, and that might happen in an unemployment rate of 3.5%, or it might even happen at an unemployment rate even lower, says Mr Garnaut. He was interviewed by Fran Kelly on Radio National Breakfast, and he said that a debt of around $3 trillion could be managed and would be consistent with the debt levels in Japan. He argues that the reflation could be funded by creating money. He says that this comes with strings attached, including the need to prudently manage the resultant debt. Professor Garnaut suggests that the Reserve Bank should buy all the bonds significantly expanded in its stocks of assets. Perhaps the most controversial aspect of the book is a proposal to pay nearly everyone a basic income. As the former economic advisor says, I propose a form of basic income. I call it Australia Income Security that would help stimulate the economy until full employment was achieved. My calculations suggest it is economically realistic. Professor Garnaut suggests that people earning less than $250,000 a year should get a top-up of around $15,000. Professor Garnaut goes further in his article, explaining that income tax should be at 37% up to $180,000 and 45% after that. Receipt of basic payment would not depend on passing a bureaucratic test of whether the recipient had put sufficient effort into the search for a job, but that everyone would basically get it. That his policy blueprint, he offers that could be picked up by governments of any persuasion. I would suggest to you that there are tenets of this that have a socialistic view. The whole idea of people being given a basic payment, a top-up for what they don't earn in their job. I mean, this is the sort of thing that, you know, if you haven't earned it or you haven't gone out and got the job to earn it, that you should be somehow given it, and that somewhere along the line somebody is funding that, you know, taxation somewhere funds it, but, you know, ultimately this debt of, $3 trillion would get us there. You know, we borrow more money to fund such a program. Who pays it back? I mean, this is the stark reality of something as simplistic as a policy that says, let's give people money, let's increase our debt to do so, but let's not worry about the business community that surely would be taxed to the hilt at some point in time to actually meet the debt to one day put us back into the black. Very interesting article from John McDonnell. You can read it all at flownews24.com.au. Would it be something that one of our political parties would pick up? I suspect that they may pick up tenets of it. I'm not sure that it would be beneficial.